comes naturally, Bob. We've talked about this.
I know. But each guest has to be aware of your idiosyncrasies.
So they don't get scared?
Yeah, they're like, what did I walk myself into?
I'm walking out the door or I'm jumping through the big picture window. I can't figure out which one will get me out faster, right?
Oh, don't break the glass.
That's what the guest is thinking. I go to the door.
All right.
Hello, everybody. I hope everybody was okay with the bi-weekly episodes. I know everybody missed me last Friday, but here we are. It's summertime. And we have good weather. It's like 70 degrees, a little breeze today. Nothing too warm, but
it is perfect outside.
It is like a good spring day in Rochester, right?
I know. Hallelujah.
Amen. So how are you, Bob?
I'm fantastic.
Anything good this weekend?
Yes. If you saw my little blog on Facebook, I went for a little trek on a portion of the Finger Lakes Trail and close to Letchworth. Great hike.
Now, I did see some kind of closed sign. You didn't jump ropes again,
I wanted to so badly. But I have figured, because the weather that we've been having lately, with the amount of water and rain, that the trail could have been easily destroyed in some way. And it being so close to the river gorge, I didn't want to take that risk. You know me, I'm rebellious. I will do what's not supposed to be done. But I figured our safety was a little bit better if we did not go on that trail.
Holy smokes, you're growing up a little bit.
I know. It took only 50 years. But
Oh, well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed the weekend. I was down at my aunt's house down on the lake a little bit. We had more maintenance repairs, like typical lake house stuff. Yeah. But it still was a good day. I got to spend some time with my cousins and my aunt.
Did you get on the water?
I did get on the water, correct. And in the water with my wetsuit, yes. I was a little bit of a wimp that I didn't want to go.
No look from the aunt saying, what are you doing? Why aren't you working?
Oh, I got a couple looks, but I was pretty productive down there, so she couldn't yell at me too much, yeah. But thanks for asking, Bob. I'm so glad you remember. All right, we have a good guest today. I promised a lot of people that I probably would say less than 10 words today, which everybody knows that's impossible.
All right.
But we have a guest that's definitely going to take up most of this episode. As everybody knows, I like to introduce how I've met this person. So I originally heard this person's name through a former guest. I believe he mentioned on this show, Steve Vandermael, who has a CBD company, and he also is on the board for Rock Normal. We had him on a couple weeks ago. You can go back to listen to that episode. He had mentioned Dr. Harold Smith, and then I was fortunate enough the week after to listen to him talk at a Canna business event, the one I talked to you about, Bob, with the Chamber of Commerce put together with Mayor Duffy and another organization, and they put on several panels for everybody to kind of talk about legislation in the state and some things that we should all think about as the legislation's being written. And it was amazing to me that Dr. Smith was there, and then I was speechless. And right afterwards, I got to meet him. And the best part of Dr. Smith isn't that he's from U of R and has done all this incredible things medically, but he's a skier. Oh, yeah. And he had the leather coat on that day. And I said, this guy's a soulful guy. Like, I could tell already. So it was a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Smith. And I welcome you to our show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So for those of you who've never seen a picture of Dr. Smith, I'd say the face kind of looks like Santa Claus, but the body is definitely, he's got that fit body to him. He doesn't have that Santa Claus body, though, folks. So that would be my best comparison for you guys who don't have video.
3 days after I joined the University of Rochester, someone plastered a picture of Dusty Hill from ZZ Top on my door. So if that gives you any feel for what I look like.
I can see that.
Perfect. Thank you for that. That is actually perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so Dr. Smith, the first thing I like to do, I always listen to personal stories, and you had told a personal story a couple times with me now, and I'd love this. First of all, how's your mother doing? Your mother's an older woman, I think around my grandmother's age, and I know there's a big change in her life recently, so I'd love to open with that if you don't mind.
Well, thanks for asking about that. She is 91 years old. She's an immigrant into this country from Europe, a part of the post-World War II kind of thing, and she's a widow. She, like most people who are getting old, I think that if you have older parents, you know that there's a lot of physical things, but then there's also appetite suppression. As you get old, you can't taste as much. And if you don't eat well, you don't take care of your body, you not only start wasting away, but your mind starts responding to that new body state. And I went through about, it's a long time with her, but the past 5 years were pretty intense, where she decided that she couldn't cope anymore, and her solution was to try to ask her scientist son how she could commit suicide. And that really, I'm the only child, and that's a stressful conversation to have a couple times a week. And I've tried to introduce her to various, techniques to keep your mind active, keep busy. But really, finally, I said, it's appetite stimulation is one of the things that the cannabis plant can bring you. And you don't have to have THC to have that effect. The other cannabinoids can do that. And it took 2 years, really, of introducing the concept. And finally, she said, well, if you send me something, I will try it. And I said, okay, so stop just a minute. I want you to ask yourself, why are you trying it now? I know why I want you to try it, but what would you look for in a change in your life? And she wrote down a couple of things. And so we went on, and in 6 weeks, she was cooking 3 meals a day, from going to every other day eating, if you can imagine that. So she had a change. And it didn't take much longer than that. Then she had a positive attitude about all sorts of things, including downsizing the house, selling it, going to independent living, getting rid of her car, just deciding how she's going to live the rest of her life. She actually said to me this weekend that she's happy. So she takes 50 mgs of CBD, full spectrum extract, sublingual under your tongue, every day. And we tried to see if an accelerated dose more often or more concentrated would help, and then she started feeling tired. So she started putting the cannabis dosing towards the evening time, and now she sleeps through the night. She has a full appetite. She's fully engaged. The other day she went off the coast of Connecticut on a boat trip, and this is someone who, if we weren't careful, would have ended her life. So I can't tell you as a scientist why that worked. I know that there's this appetite thing going on. No one really completely understands the cannabis plant now, but I saw it work. And we're doing daily dosing, and so thank you for asking about her. I think I'm relieved that I can continue doing the things in my life and not worry about that phone call someday.
And my grandmother struggles mightily from arthritis. So we've tried some topical lotions for her, and I brought tinctures to her that seem to help at times as well. Mm-hmm. She calls it Uncle Arthur. But luckily, my grandma's always been positive, never got down too of a negative road, other than the fact that it's her own personal frustration that she'll take out on other people a little bit, that she's frustrated she can't do the things she used to be able to do with her hands. But I think my grandmother's a little more stubborn than your mother, because I know she hasn't tried the dosages consistently to see that difference in her. But it's one of that. What do you say? You can bring a horse to water, you can't make them drink.
Right. Well, I think what made the turning point for her is that I'm her healthcare proxy, and after really we go back now 10 or 20 years, where doctors were meeting with her in a kind of a zip-zop meeting in the office. This is what you need to take. Make another appointment. I'll see you in a while. And then I learned that she didn't understand what she was doing or what was being prescribed or why it was. So I became the healthcare proxy, and I started now coaching her on what did this mean? What was he saying when he said that? And in 3 situations, I've caught dosing that was off for her, or the failure to put something into her dose regimen. So I think it kind of conditioned her. She saw I was right a few times. Mom's always going to be critical, and you're never going to get away from that. But
that's a very fair way to put it. Sometimes they have to see where you're right to say, okay, now I'm believing you.
Guess what? I'm signing my own checks. It's that kind of thing.
So you obviously haven't been in, not obviously to other people, but you haven't been in the cannabis industry very long. I'm curious to how you got brought into the Canna business event, but before that, I kind of want to give people a background. You've been brought up through the University of Rochester, and you have several degrees. Please tell everybody your background a little bit so they can understand where you come from.
Well, the beginning, not going too far back, is I'm an Army brat. And my father served at the end of World War II, and that's where he met my mother in Austria. And then he was stationed in Bavaria, and I was born in Bavaria. And then we transferred to Frankfurt, and that's where we lived. Every 2 years, we moved to another housing project in Frankfurt. And, I came to the States when I was 12 and started the school system from that point on, and then went to college to Purdue, got 2 degrees there, and then decided that I wanted to be a card-carrying molecular biologist, so a gene jockey, understanding how genes work and how I can control that to divert disease. And so I went to SUNY Buffalo, got 2 degrees from there, and decided that it was time to go for my postdoc, and I left for Houston, Texas, which is like the Emerald City. If you've ever been down to the medical center in Houston, it's like your jaw drops. There's nothing but cranes building skyscrapers, and that was an excellent experience. Worked in the Howard Hughes Institute there for a medical institute for a while, and then took my faculty position in 1986 at the University of Rochester. So that's kind of the career, envelope there. I work in an area that's gene editing. Many people have started hearing about things like CRISPR and gene editing. That's the new boy on the block. I predate that with gene editing and what I did, and I kind of led my field of. At one time, I think it was in 1994, there were 50 of us, and now there's over 400 people who are principal investigators in this area.
So 400 people in that
400 in this specific area of gene editing for the way we do it. Yeah. And so I'm one of those scientists, and I'm considered an opinion leader. So people call me up and ask me how things work and what do I think about stuff, and to write reviews and things. So I do research. So basically the research that in this gene editing field started out in cancer, gravitated towards looking at type 2 diabetes, obesity-induced diabetes, and those kind of things, and all the problems that go wrong with your lipids, cholesterols, and things like that. And that was really the forte. That drove me through the promotion and ranks in the University of Rochester. And while I was doing that, I realized that my approach to things as a gene editor was to try to understand the problem at the level of how 2 molecules come together and how they touch one another, and why was that important for the disease. And then I trumped those into a new situation where I could only look at them playing against one another, and then we try to figure out the parts, right? So we're really like Lego blocks at the level of molecules, and pulling pieces off, putting this on, taking this off, and figuring out disease mechanisms. And I realized I do this day in and day out to figure out diabetes, hypercholesterol, and then I turned into HIV/AIDS because that was the path that this was all leading to. And right now I have another company called Oyogen that's here in Rochester, and we're about a year away from filing an investigational new drug with the FDA. On a brand new way of approaching HIV. And we think that it has curative potential because it takes advantage of a natural defense your body has against HIV. And we learned that the first thing HIV does when it infects you is it takes down that defense. And now it can do what it wants. And so we said, wait a minute, how does that takedown happen? What's the grip? And so we figured that out, and so that brought me into a pharmacological, drug discovery arena where people are saying, in order for this to be a real drug, you have to prove this, you have to prove that, you have to prove, 10 steps to get there. Okay, so meanwhile, the cannabis conversation's coming on, and I hear people talk about, hey, I've got this stuff, it's 500 milligrams in this bottle of CBD. Someone says, well, I've got stuff that's 500 milligrams of CBD in a full spectrum product. And another person says, oh, no, my bottle's 500 milligrams of cannabinoids. And I just slapped my forehead and I said, my gosh, there's no conversation here that's real. This doesn't deal with dosing. It doesn't deal with the critical chemical composition of the product. How would I ever know how to choose a product and for what purpose? So I said, wait a minute. What I do every single day is that as a scientist. So I saw a need, I decided to step off my path and fill a need, and I developed Canna Metrix as my second company, whose whole goal is to be able to say to people, this product will be consistent for you because it is dose dependent. So dose matters. In a human cell, whether it's liver, lung, or whatever you're looking at, or white blood cells, along a particular pathway in the cell that we associate with certain diseases or health phenomenon. So this product has been validated at a bar that's much higher than anything else. And if your product had that level of validation, the testing, in other words, it would differentiate itself in the marketplace, because instead of looking at those 3 bottles with different labels that are maybe even the same stuff, who knows?